Well, start a new week again. And we're only 1 week away from May now. So moving his plants on into bigger containers to get them growing quicker is even more important. And we've moved lots and lots of things on over the last couple of weeks. But we've still got a few more that we need to do today. And I've got these tomato plants. We've been growing these indoors. And you can see that they're now started to get the first true leaf. And also they're in very small cells, so they're not going to grow very quick at all. As well as that, some of these plants started to get a little bit tall or leggy. So the sooner we move these, the better. We can bury them a little bit deeper and take some of that stretch out of that stem, while at the same time putting them into their own containers to grow on a bit quicker. And I'm only going to move them into these ones, just like we did those peppers last week, because at least they've got their own individual spaces to grow then. And the sooner we get that done, the better. So about 10 minutes later, and we've got all these pots filled up. This compost has been pre-moistened as well. So now we can take these tiny little plants out and give them their own individual space. And that's how we stage our plants as we come towards planting out. They start off in those cells and then we move them into 9cm containers. So they put on a nice bit of growth. And then if needs be, we'll move them into 2 litre containers. So these are narrow to size where you could plant them in ground or in your containers to grow them for the rest of the season. But obviously you don't want to be doing that just yet. Because if, like me, you're always checking weather, apparently tonight, depending on what area of country that you're in, it could drop down to -1. And that's what it's saying for the Derbyshire area. So you might want to have a quick check at weather in your area. Because if it's going to drop down to -1, things like your tomatoes, peppers and cucumber plants are going to suffer. So you either need to take those indoors for tonight or pop some fleece over them. I've also got one of these in a 2 litre container. That's called cherry foils and it's a bush tomato. So it doesn't grow huge, but it does produce a lot of cherry tomatoes. So this is perfectly adapted for containers or baskets. And we've got it in a 2 litre pot at the moment, but obviously it's going to need a bigger container than that. So I'll be putting it in probably something this size. It's not a huge container and we can always move it on into a bigger one if we need to at any point during the season. But it just gives it that bit more room to put those roots out and produce a bigger plant. And also, the more times you're moving your tomato plants on, the deeper you can bury them to get a nice thick strong stem. So I just like to pot them on as I feel they need it, and then I can add a bit of feed to that compost at the same time, giving those plants a real boost. And although we don't need to move this plant at the moment because it's not getting root bound, you can still see that we have got roots at the bottom of this container, even though that plant's not very big. So it wouldn't hurt to move it on even at this stage, because by doing that we can just press this in central to that container, and then we'll fill that container up and we'll bury that stem once again. And at this point of year, that's the only thing you need to be doing. Don't be putting your tomato plants in ground just yet, because we know how this weather keeps shifting. So I'm just going to pop a bit of compost around this plant and bury some of that stem at the same time. Bury it right down to that first set of leaves that came out. And then pop your label back in. So now this little cherry tomato plant is in quite a big container. And there's a good chance we'll be able to leave it in that container for the entire season. But we'll see just how big that plant gets, knowing we have still got an option to move it if needs be. And then we can start and move on the smallest seedlings that we've got. We've got all this pots set up and I've made holes in every one. really deep ones down to the bottoms of those containers. Then we can start and get these out. And I think we'll start with these ones. Those at San Lorenzo, and as I said, they've got true leaves appearing on them now. So the sooner we move them, the better. And I think the San Lorenzo are the quickest growing out of these 3 varieties. So we'll start off with those. We need to be careful taking tomato plants out. Don't pull them out by its stem. Try and pick them up by leaves. And as always, I'm removing some of this compost so it'll go into that hole a bit easier. You can see we've got a nice little root system there. And we also want to get them planted a bit deeper than they were. So with tomato plants, carefully push them in. Got to try really hard not to damage that stem. So that's one sorted. Then same again. Poking it down, make sure we get all those roots in there, and then push it far down enough to just bury a stem again. You can bury as much as that stem as you want as well, as long as you leave those true leaves above that soil, your plants will be alright. So I'll just keep working my way through this pipe. And you can see this one's got a couple of extra stems, and that's where we pinched off some that were growing beside it, because we multi-sown them to start with, just to make sure we'd get something. We'll get this one in as well. And some of these stems have got a bit of a bend on them, as you probably noticed, which is another good reason to try and move them on. You can straighten them out at the same time by taking that little bit of a bend out before it gets any worse. I will just carry on and we'll get all these transferred. And that's another thing off us mind before we get to May. And I have mentioned this before, but sometimes you might see tomato plants fall over after you've potted them on. But don't worry about that. Just give them a couple of hours after direct sunlight and they'll get back up in their own time. It's just a little bit of transplant shock. Apart from doing jobs like that, something else we need to keep an eye on is things we've got growing in these 12 cell packs. Because this courgette has now got its first true leaf. That's going to start and grow really quick. And this cell is not going to be big enough. Let's take it out. This plant's only a couple of weeks old. And we've got lots of roots in the bottom of here. Far too many for that little cell. So again, as a matter of priority between now and mid-May, you need to get all these little plants moved on. So just for now, I'm going to put it in one of these square tubs. A bit of loose composting. And then we're trying not to disturb root system too much on these plants. Just free them off a little bit, but only if they're tangled. And then we can pop that in there, dead central. And then infill around it. Don't plant your cucumbers or courgettes any deeper than they were. You don't need to do that. Plus, there's a good chance you could rot that stem. 9 times out of 10, these plants come out really stocky anyway, because they're just big seedlings. So just for the sake of a few seconds, and that's in a pot now, where it could grow to about that height. And by that time, we're going to be in mid-May, so that can go straight in your container or in ground. We have got various plants at various stages of growth. But these were just poking through that soil only a couple of days ago. And they're sugar snap peas. And just in that couple of days, they're now up and a couple of inch high. So once again, we need to think about moving these. And these are going to go straight outside with the rest of those peas that we put in a couple of weeks ago, because we're trying to get staggered harvests on peas this year. And we've got a couple of trays of these, but for now we're going to leave them in here because we know there's a chance for a -1 tonight. So anything like cucumbers, courgettes, small tomato plants, pepper plants, if you can, take them indoors just for tonight to protect those plants. But if you can't, just put some fleece over the top, because that will make a lot of difference. And just before I go, I want to say thank you to Samantha Knott for making a donation to the channel over the weekend. That's very kind of you and very much appreciated. And of course it always goes back into this channel. So thank you for that, Samantha. Anyway, I've got loads and loads of things that I need to look at behind me today and work on what needs moving on, what's alright as it is. Because we've sowed loads of seeds already and we're just waiting for those to come up. But while we're waiting for those, we need to get the ones that's already up moved on into bigger pots. Because in about 4 weeks' time, we're going to start planting everything in raised beds, in containers and in ground in the greenhouses. So the sooner we move them, the bigger those plants are going to get. And the closer we are to getting everything set up ready for his 2023 harvests. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you'd like to follow everything that we do all the way through the season, then please hit that subscribe button and press that notifications bell. And we look forward to seeing you on the next update. You all take care.